Welcome to Titans for Life with your hosts, Justin Dubo and Dean Mayrand. Hey fellas, welcome back to the Titans for Life podcast. As you probably already know, this is the show where we explore what it means to become stronger in every area of life: fitness, family, finances, sometimes faith, and purpose. Today, we're joined by a veteran, father, coach, entrepreneur, and founder of the Iron Forge Brotherhood on School. Through fitness, accountability, hormone optimization, and personal development, he's helping thousands of men raise their standards and become stronger husbands, fathers, and leaders. Josh Holyfield, welcome to the Titans for Life podcast.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for the invite, gentlemen.
We're really excited to break it down with you today, like we were talking about before the show. When it comes to the trajectory we're on, we're kind of working towards the same goals as you. You just seem to be further along the journey. So we're excited to learn from you today.
Yeah, man, it's going to be a pleasure. And I'm happy to help and, serve in any capacity possible. So even after, if you guys ever have questions or you need help or even just communion, somebody to talk to about where you're at with your businesses or where you're trying to go, man, I'm happy to serve in any way I can.
So let's kick this thing off. Who is Josh Holyfield today, and what path brought you here?
That's a loaded question, man. I guess it depends on who you ask. If I was to tell you who I am, I could tell you, in short, I'm just a guy who has been called to serve. And I truly believe that, service is through leadership. It starts by being an example and showing up as the version of yourself that you're called to be by pursuing your greatest passion, purpose, and potential. Built quite a big community around that. And I think the reason for that is because service also means doing it without any expectation of getting anything in return. And I think that's kind of the big piece that a lot of folks miss, right? Is especially fathers, husbands, right? Is doing things for the thank you rather than doing it because that's what you've been called to do by God and help, provide, give, teach, mentor. And this is a hard lesson that I had as well. And so for me, going into the space as an entrepreneur and a mentor for a lot of men and a coach, it really just comes down to giving back to the world in the same way it's given to me. And that's really what my goal is.
Yeah, very well said. That's alignment, right? When you're giving back and you're not expecting anything, like that feels like real, authentic alignment for us anyways. And I know you feel the same, obviously.
When we started out with the Titans for Life journey, it was the same thing. We were just so happy to help others, and we get words of encouragement. And all of a sudden, the workout group's 20 people. There's people asking us when the next podcast is out. We're thrilled about that. We're just happy to help.
And, I think the big thing too is like in the era of the internet and social media and influencers, and everybody's a coach, everybody's selling something, everybody's trying to monetize. And it's a very inward facing industry, right? It's about me. It's about what are you going to give me? What can I get? And, admittedly, I've even ran down that path for quite some time during my entrepreneurial journey online and doing what I'm doing now. And you realize over time that you lose good people because you place expectations on them. And it's no longer genuine. And you're now operating in a place of bias when you have expectations, right? So that major shift in kind of just surrendering myself to service is really what I think made the biggest and most profound change in my identity, as well as all of the great success we've been seeing in the last couple of years.
Yeah, for sure. It's a noble cause. What lessons from the military still influence how you lead your family, business, and community? I'm sure you learned a lot there.
So my take on military discipline and kind of that experience is a little bit different than most. I don't think the military does a very great job of preparing men for the real world. Now, admittedly, I would also say that we always joke around about it where, I say the military was my father. It did teach a lot of important aspects of accountability and integrity when it came to being active duty and serving. But in terms of like the discipline aspect of things, I guess my opinion on that is different, which I guess we'll get into. But in terms of the lessons that I took away from the military specifically and how I lead and serve, as I realized that you have to lead as an example, regardless of rank, position, hierarchy, or structure within an organization, especially amongst men. Honor is something that's earned. In fact, I would make the argument that it's rented. And the way that you're going to earn the respect and honor of other men following you and being a leader means that you have to show up as the one that they want to follow.
Consistently.
Yes, consistently. You can't miss. And I think we as men collectively, we all want that position on the high horse, right? You want the respect and the honor that comes with being him, but you don't realize the price that comes with it. And so I had good leaders in the military, some spectacular leaders that were role models for me who influenced who I am as a man today. And I also had very poor leaders while I was in the military. And what I will say is, as out of all the greatest leaders that I had the honor of serving beneath, every single one of them, they were the first to show up, the last to leave, the last to eat, and the first to fall on a sword if needed to make sure that the needs of the people that they were responsible for were met. And when you take that mindset, you bring it into the civilian world, man, like that's something that you don't see much of. And it's hard to lead from that place because you're like the one that's doing it differently, and the society pressures you to be, behave otherwise. Nobody does that. And I guess to kind of close that out, what that means is you have to learn to be a man of conviction and principle. Doing things for the right reasons is really what it comes down to.
That was so well said. I mean, extreme ownership, right? Be the example, live the example every single day, and don't drift. And if you drift, get right back on the horse and get that train right back on the tracks.
And be willing to do it without thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the hard part, because a lot of guys, I used to be the guy with mommy issues. Hey, look at me, look what I did. And now it's no longer about service. It's about serving yourself and your reputation and the way people perceive you. You're manipulating people when you do that. And I think that's a hard lesson to learn as a man is I need to do this because this is what's right. And this is what I believe, standing in a place of conviction rather than doing it because it's, at the end of the day, I'm trying to manipulate the world, the way the world perceives me.
Yeah, that cost of becoming is sometimes ignored, and it takes a long time to get there, but you need to be able to push through that and become the leader you were meant to be. What were some of the hardest seasons of your life that forged the man that you've become?
One of the things that I talk on this a lot, but the reason I want to speak specifically to this is because it's something you see a lot of in the military. I remember my first combat deployment was Iraq, 2005. I was there for 18 months. I was in love, married a girl when I got home, had a kid, ran off into the sunset. I was 20 years old. I thought everything was perfect. This is very common, especially in the military. Guys start families very young. And I got out of the military in 2010. This is a couple years after I was married, had a 2-year-old. And honestly, I wasn't the man that she married anymore. I lost myself. I conceded my standards. I conceded the integrity I had. And at the end of the day, like over time, I kind of just, I guess, lowered my standards on who I was. I was not the man that I promised her I would be. We'll just say that. Eventually, I came to a place where I had to do another deployment to Afghanistan. This time I did it as a civilian, a year. And during that entire deployment, she was a stay-at-home mom. I had her mom living with me. I was providing for her mom, taking care of her. And I was just really trying to pull my life together after my trouble getting out of the military and kind of integrating back into the world. Well, I found out during that entire deployment, she had another man living in my house, driving my car. My child was calling her dad, and everyone she knew thought I was dead.
Wow.
Meanwhile, I was fronting the bill for this, right?
The shock that you must have had.
I remember, I found out because I had a friend of mine who finally had the courage to tell me. And that was the worst part about it. It was like everyone that I knew knew this was happening, but they were afraid to tell me because they didn't want to be the person to kind of spill the beans. Right.
Hmm.
And I was embarrassed. I was betrayed. I was hurt. But most importantly, I think the big challenge was I had felt like up to that point in my life, yeah, I wasn't perfect, but like in terms of being a man, being a father, being a provider, I'd done everything right. Like this is what I was raised to do in terms of like what it means to be a man and provide. And doing the right thing had me basically looking like an idiot with a cheating wife. Right. Well, the worst part was like, I didn't know what to do because I was in this situation where it's like, how the family court system is. You leave this woman, you might as well just kiss your kid goodbye too. And now you just signed up to a lifetime worth of child support and you look like an asshole. Right.
Yeah.
So I stayed with her. And over the following X number of years, she continued with the same type of behavior, embarrassed me, emasculated me. And I could tell you, man, the reason I'm sharing this story is because most men, especially your guys' viewers, have or will go through a period in their life where somebody reaches into their chest, pulls their heart out, throws it on the ground, stomps on it, jumps in their car, drives over it, backs over it, and then walks away playing the victim. Your entire perspective on the world is going to change. And it's either going to be the catalyst that you need to become the man that you're actually called to become, which in my case, it absolutely was, or it's going to be the thing that breaks you. And I can tell you, man, there were countless nights where I'm sitting here with a, bottle of liquor and a 9mm pistol asking myself, what's the point? And that was kind of the start of my trajectory towards the man that you guys see today. And so I look back in retrospect, right? And, you mentioned this earlier, Dean, it's extreme ownership. Did she do the wrong thing? Absolutely. But she has to face that. She has to come, like answer to those sins for those sins. The only way that I was able to get through that better than I was before, instead of allow that experience to completely crush me, was by asking myself, where did I fall short? How can I show up as a better man? How can I lead better? How can I do a better job of fulfilling my promise to be the best husband, father, leader for my family I can be? Where am I falling short in fulfilling my purpose and potential as a man? And how can I step into my power and use this as a tool to push me towards the version of myself I'm called to be, rather than play victim? And the reason I'm sharing that story is because I know for a fact that nearly every man has to go through this. And it's a transformation that absolutely must occur.
Yeah.
And, divorce, going through breakups, heartbreak, cheating, etc. Like it happens in different ways for different men, but you have to use that instead of allow it to break you.
Dude, thanks so much for sharing that story because it's extremely powerful. And I truly believe behind every great man, there's a pile of shit that he had to navigate through to get to that point where he turned himself around. And you said the right thing. That man's got to be able to look himself in the mirror and ask the right questions. How could I have changed the outcome? How could I have been better? What was my fault? Right. And then how do I stop that from happening again?
Absolutely, man. And, I've shared this story in videos on podcasts in the past. And a lot of times the comments that you'll get from some men will be, well, you're trying to take ownership for her behavior and her actions. You were a good man. You did the right thing. And sure, maybe, but isn't that what being a man is?
100% taking ownership no matter what.
You want to be the leader. Well, guess what? With authority comes responsibility, which means that regardless of whether or not it's actually your fault, if you're going to be the captain of this ship, then you better be willing to step up and take fucking responsibility for everything that happens on it, whether it's your fault or not. And that level of responsibility is something that you can't take lightly.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you want the authority, you have 100% of the authority. You have to assume 100% of the responsibility under every circumstance. And I could point the finger all day at all the things that she did. but that kind of makes me a bitch if I do.
100%. It
Yep.
doesn't teach anything, right?
So that was kind of my take on it. It's just suck it up, man. Like, use this or point the finger for the rest of your life. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
Yep. I really enjoyed that story too, because the way you emphasized it, it was kind of like it's a fork in the road moment for everybody when you get to a position like that. And you can either improve from it, or there's always that chance that you slip back into alcohol or anything like that. Dean and I have had issues with that in the past. Alcohol, drugs, like it's easy to check out and just kind of pretend that it didn't happen. But I like the way that you went with that. It was like you're on a very noble journey now, and we're excited to see where you go with it from here.
Thank you. Yeah. And, one thing to add to that, man, and maybe we'll speak to some other guys in the community here, is a lot of you are parents, right? Fathers. And I can tell you, man, like, I had a tough life. We'll just leave it at that. And, in retrospect, I know that those experiences were what tempered me into the man that you see today. And my biggest challenge is I see my sons and my daughters and I look at them, and it's heartbreaking to know that one day the world is going to hurt them. But the problem is the world doesn't care the way that I do. The world is going to chew them up and spit them out if I don't prepare them. And the only way that I can prepare them is to allow them to suffer to a certain
Yeah.
degree, right? So the question, and this is the challenge that I still struggle with as a father, and my oldest is 17 years old now, is how do I give them the lesson without the pain?
Yes.
Because
Oh, yeah.
I love them, my children. I want to teach them. I want them to be happy. I don't want them to experience all the hardship and struggle that I did as a child, but I needed that.
Mhm.
So how do I teach them in a way where they can extract the lessons that I give them
Without the pain.
without having to carry all the trauma?
I'm running into that too with my 3 young boys that I have right now. You're trying to train them for the world that inevitably at some point, like one shell's going to get through. It's going to hit the side of the ship. Are they going to be ready or not? But how do you
Yeah.
remove that pain? I still haven't answered that question either.
And at the end of the day, what it comes down to is you have to be harder on them than the world could ever be. And it's probably going to hurt you more than it hurts them.
Mm-hmm.
And one day they'll thank you, even though they might hate you now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
It's more about seeding the field and then reaping the harvest later on when they come home and they say, Dad, thank you for what you did.
Yeah. And, the lessons that you're facing as a man, like the story that I told, that's exactly what God's doing for you.
100%.
He's preparing you for what's to come. And if you can't make it through this, then how am I going to give you this? Right. So when you start looking at these struggles as opportunities, even though they suck, now it kind of shifts your worldview and it gives you more power to push forward as, into becoming what you're called to be.
Well, that's such a phenomenal outlook, right? You got to be thankful for the shit almost, right? And your perception has to be when these shitty things happen, let's call it relationship issues or, lose my job or transmission's gone and the washer and dryer both shit the bed in the same week. Like, you have to be able to look at it. Okay, wipe away the tears real quick, roll up the sleeves and say, I'm a man, I can handle this. I have the capacity. What did I do that could have prepared me better for these things, to handle these things, right? And how can I set my life up better, giving myself more resilience, making sure I'm stronger, making sure I have more money in the bank, whatever it is, right? Like, you have to be able to look at these shitty things that happen and be grateful for the lesson.
I always tell my guys, you don't have to get ready if you stay ready.
That's right.
Yeah.
Great saying. So, with the state of men today, it seems like masculinity is kind of taken a bit of a hit. Why do you think so many men today feel lost despite living in the most comfortable era in human history?
I think my view on that is a little bit different than it's been. My opinion on that perspective has changed than compared to what it was in the past, right? I would say that, general consensus is that we're seeing a significant reduction in masculine men. Society is shifting, things are comfortable, but I disagree. I think that men rise to their calling, and in a time of need, the leaders will emerge. Perfect examples. I've got, I think, 14 full-time staff now. And a lot of the guys that work for me are outside here in my warehouse. They're under the age of 25. And these young men are bright, intelligent, ambitious, driven, very masculine young men. And I spend a lot of time mentoring them and helping them and giving them guidance. And it's something that I really love doing, but it's really taught me to realize that society and people in general have a tendency to want to just point the finger at the problem. Masculinity is on the fall. You know, we don't have enough strong men. You know, why is it that things are so comfortable? Look, men are the ones who created the comfort. We gave you what you fucking asked for. We
Yep.
built the world you wanted. Now you're mad because you don't need us anymore. We'll be back when you need us after you break it, just like we always do.
Oh, I
Right?
love that.
Coming in as the cleanup crew again. Yeah, no worries there.
Yeah, don't get shit twisted. Men are still the backbone of the world. Whether we want to pretend that's not the case on social media and look at all these talking heads who literally exist for the sake of creating content and talking about problems. While these assholes are on podcasts, you have men who are waking up before the sun and making the world run. Blue collar, farmers, construction, engineers, you name it, who aren't spending their time on the internet doing this. I don't think masculinity is on the fall. I think we're in an era of people who spend more time talking than they do anything else. They take no action. And because of that, they lack any degree on the actual perspective of what's occurring in the world. Now, in terms of the feminist movement, I think that that's probably one of the things that is, again, the most damaging to the, we'll say, male condition, for lack of a better term. But again, it's a situation where it's, we gave you what you asked for. When you break it, we'll be back to fix it. Until then, shut the fuck up and stop complaining.
Yeah, agree with that. One thing I'd add to that is we might have been a little bit too soft for a few years. We let off the pedal, I think, is a big issue. We kind of created this mess ourselves, and it comes back to you talking about taking extreme ownership. Like, I look back at the last 30 or 40 years, we just didn't quite do what our fathers did for us in a way, and society kind of went sideways because of it. So I think there are a few men that do need that help.
I agree with you, but at the same time, like, I'll be honest, man, like, I'm a perfect example. Is my dad, he wasn't around for the most part, right? And, you know, my brother and I are polar opposites in terms of the direction that we went in life. And, you know, I look back and I remember when my father died at his funeral, I spoke the eulogy. And one of the things that I said is, every person does the best that they feel like they can with the tools they have. And what I didn't know is my father didn't have a dad. How is he supposed to teach me something he wasn't equipped to teach? Right. And so, from my perspective, it's okay. I can sit here and talk about how we didn't have dads and blah, 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 or I can shut up and stop complaining and get up and be the change that I'm claiming needs to occur in the world.
100%.
You know, and at a certain point, you have to stop pointing the finger, passing the buck. And I think that's the typical kind of cycle that we go through where, like, all the older generation of men is, you know, men aren't what they were. And, you know, men aren't what they used to be. Sit down, grandpa. Like, we'll step into our role when we need to.
Yes.
When I was 18 years old, was around, you know, 9/11. What happened? You had an entire country of men who were considered weak by their forefathers who stepped up and did what they needed to do.
Yep, exactly. We had a recent podcast guest, Jason Kalipa. I'm sure you've heard of him. He just started working with the police force in the San Francisco Bay Area because he felt like there was a problem with physical fitness in the force. And then that's a perfect example of that. If you see a problem, come to me with solutions, not just the problem itself, right?
100%. I live in a military town here in Georgia, and a lot of the older non-commissioned officers and leaders, they talk about how the standards in the military are lowering, physical fitness expectations are lowering. You know, same things kind of occurring across the board for, like, EMS, firefighters, as well as police officers. The expectations that we're holding these people are lower. That's because the demand for that physical need is also lower. Right? When we come into a position where we actually need the physicality of men, those men will step into that place and those standards will rise. And so I just think it's a cycle, almost like a pendulum. And there's a really good book that talks about this if you're interested. It's written by a gentleman named Stefan Arnio, and it's called Hard Times Create Strong Men. And he literally talks about how we're on an 80-year pendulum where every 40 years, you kind of see it swing back the other direction. And I think right now we're kind of on the tail end of that, where we're going to see a big shift. And I think the Gen Z upcoming generation of young men is actually that shift back towards that, we'll say, right leaning conservative perspective where men are men. Millennials are kind of taking the step back into the back seat. And now you have these younger men who are stepping up who have what I would say more practical conservative viewpoints that are going to kind of take it back in the right direction. We'll just say that.
Yeah, I've seen that too. I think it's going to happen eventually. So, do you think there are certain habits or mindsets that are keeping modern men stuck? And what does actually being a strong man mean today?
Sure. So I think the number one habit that keeps any man stuck is allowing his emotions to drive his decision making process. I have a gentleman who I just spent some time mentoring yesterday, actually, who I had to sit him down and say, hey, look, man, if you're going to be associated with my business, you're going to work for me. I'm not going to accept every time I open up Instagram seeing your little heart icon next to some half naked girl's photo.
Reasonable standard.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's embarrassing. You have a wife, you have a child at home. This is not the type of person I want to associate with.
Not acceptable.
And, you know, his mindset was, well, you know, being lustful is just part of my personality. It's who I am. And that statement, I think, is the core of the answer to the question that you just asked. What is it that men have the hardest time with? It's understanding that being virtuous, being a man of integrity, means that you have to practice self-control and be willing to do what you know is right, regardless of how you feel about it, right?
Yes.
You have to be stoic and understand that that's what makes you a high quality man. And when you live in this life where you prioritize how you feel, as the Bible would say, being of the flesh, then you're missing on the entire plot of why you're here.
Yes.
You can't step into your greatest purpose and fulfill, you know, your role and what you're called to be if you're allowing these things to distract you. And I think today, you know, every man has his demons, he has his vice, he has his things that he keeps in the closet. But I think we're in an era now with pornography and alcohol and drug use and drug abuse where society is becoming more accepting of these things. And what I'll say is, just because society writ large is, you know, kind of shaving away things being taboo doesn't necessarily make them right.
Exactly.
Right? You have to choose right. And until you can do that, you're not going to be able to step completely into your power. And what I'll say, or I'll close with this, is that is the definition of self-respect, is honoring yourself. Because you can't look in the mirror and be proud of the man that you see fully and completely if you know behind closed doors you're doing something you're not proud of.
Hey, fellow Titans. Just wanted to pause quick and mention that this episode today is sponsored by our own Titans for Life hydration pack. And listen, this isn't complicated. If you're training, hiking, biking, walking, coaching, working outside, or doing anything where you're sweating and moving for more than 5 minutes, you need to stay hydrated. This pack is simple, rugged, and useful. It has a 2-liter water bladder, adjustable straps, breathable back support, and enough of that tactical Titans feel without being overbuilt or goofy. It's the kind of thing you throw on and go. So if you want to support the podcast and grab a solid piece of gear at the same time, search Titans for Life Hydration Pack on Amazon or use the link in the show notes. Now, back to the show. And eventually, at some point, it's going to catch up to you.
And it's going to eat you. It's going to eat you alive.
Karma's a bitch. It comes in hot and heavy and fast.
And I think that's been holding a lot of guys back. Yeah.
Josh, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, I think a lot of men are just telling themselves stories from the programming of society when the answer in that next level for them is looking in the mirror and answering some of those questions honestly, being fully transparent with themselves and saying, you know, what is this habit doing for me? Is it making me better or is it making me worse? And what habits do I have to include in my life to make me better? But that awareness, I think, or the honesty is, I think, the biggest problem, right? Like the programming over time and just, this is okay to do this. This is okay to do this. I'm doing good. Everything's good.
It's easy to justify your own behavior if society is encouraging you to do it.
Mhm.
Yes.
Oh, well, so and so is doing it. I mean, this is the age old lesson that mom tried to teach us. If so and so jumped off a bridge, would you too? Right? Like this is like happening at a grand scale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. I think that even I have my vices, admittedly. And, for me, the thing that I do that keeps me honest is I talk about it. I put
Yeah.
it out there. I tell people, hey, this is what I struggle with. These are my things that I've done, my failures, my shortcomings. And when you put that in the open, it's no longer something that you can be ashamed of. Because I think shame is a very powerful emotion. And it's a lot of what drives us as men to be cowards. It's shame. And so if you force that into the open and you confront it rather than cowering behind it, that's going to be probably the greatest tool that you can use to overcome those challenges.
Yeah. Communication is key, getting it out to the universe.
This is where that true brotherhood really comes in, right? Is when you throw it out there, like you said, to your buddies and to your brothers, and you're setting yourself up for the shit talking that's going to come back at you in the beacon, but you're being vulnerable. That's why brotherhood is so vital in men, especially as they get older, instead of the isolation that we gravitate towards, I guess, as we get older. Like that brotherhood is vital, I think, to a man's success.
And your wife's not going to hold you accountable, bro.
No.
Yeah.
In some aspects, yes, but it's not the same as a brother. There's a difference between the two. Yeah. I love both brotherhood and my wife, but there's a difference.
I look at a wife as she's counting on you to create that structure. She's counting on you to lead. She's counting on you to be the example, right? How is she going to feel safe inside of the structure of your home, your kingdom, your safety that you're supposed to provide as that leader that you said you wanted to be if she's having to hold up the walls?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, there's usually 4 walls and she's got 2 hands. So good luck with that. We need all hands on deck.
So, in my mind, I don't look at her as somebody who's supposed to hold me accountable. I should be ashamed if my wife has to call me out. She's looking at me. Again, this is going back to kind of what I talked about at the beginning of this conversation. Like a lot of men, they want that title, but they don't want the responsibility that comes with it. You want her to admire you and love you and respect you, but you ask her to double check you to wake up with your fucking alarm? Which one is it?
You hold her to a high standard, but then your standards are so low that she can't even respect you, right? Like it's a terrible place to be.
And that's the thing is I used to tell the guys who are overweight all the time, my wife, she doesn't sleep with me anymore. Well, take off your shirt, look in the mirror. Would you want to sleep with you? Hey, me, dude, get in the gym.
Yeah. I wouldn't even sleep with me now and I'm not fat anymore.
Well, I hope not, right?
Yeah. I've lived with myself long enough. I think I'm ugly. But anyway, moving on. Dean was talking about the importance of brotherhood there. This is a perfect segue. So when you were starting the Iron Forge Brotherhood, what type of problem were you trying to solve there?
I started the Iron Forge back in 2017 when I was going through my divorce. And what ended up happening is I had an hour and a half commute. I gave her everything. The dude that she left me for, literally, I told him, I said, come over to the house, take whatever you want. This dude pulled up with a 40-foot trailer, enclosed trailer, and emptied my house into the back of his truck. Took it all. I didn't care. Whatever. My home was completely empty. It was a bed with a dresser and a plastic table where I kept my laptop and did my podcast episodes on. That's what I walked away with. And on my drive to work in the morning, I had a GoPro and I would sit it in the dashboard of my truck and I would just share the lessons, the experiences, the things that I was going through. And I would post them on Instagram. That was it. And eventually, like the gym became one of those parts of therapy for me where I would share my workouts and my weight loss progress. And I was changing my body and my physique, and it was helping me stay mentally focused. And it became that tool that I used to lock in. Well, as I started doing that, guys, they would start asking, hey, like, can you help me out with a workout program? So what I did is I wrote down a plan that I used. It was a 4-week program. I did a post on it and I said, hey, if you want this thing, send me a message and I'll give you a free copy. And over like a 6-month period, I ended up giving away like 40,000 copies of this program. It went viral.
Wow.
And I built a Facebook group around that program and helping guys. And that was kind of the genesis or the birth of the Iron Forge program. And so after years and years of doing it, the Facebook group kind of fell apart because I changed who I was and how I was delivering my message. And I didn't show up as that man who just wanted to help people like I did when I first started. I became a guy who wanted to be an entrepreneur and monetize his audience, and it ruined everything. So back in 2023, I basically burnt the whole thing down and I started over. And now we're back up to the school group I think has like 35,000 members or something like that. And then we also did a women's group, which isn't really the same, right? But the men's group, very, very active. And it's exactly what I want it to be, guys just helping each other.
That's awesome to hear.
Oh, it's super inspiring. Like, again, we're climbing the same mountain, brother. And I love hearing the trials of it, like the Facebook page didn't work out and you reinvented it and then put it all together again. And like, these are skills you're developing over time, right?
And that's really the key, right? Like you say, entrepreneur. And I was having this conversation with a guy yesterday who's like, hey, I've got $10,000. I want to start a business. What should I do? And I'm like, you don't need $10,000 to start a business. Go help one person doing the thing that you're qualified to help people do, given your life experience. Focus on that. Because really, the only thing being an entrepreneur or business owner is just solving people's problems at scale. So if I want to start a business, instead of thinking about how much money you can make, why don't you instead just ask yourself, who can I help? How can I help? How can I serve people? And you do that for long enough and you just give. Eventually people are going to come to you and they're going to say, hey, how can I pay you? Well, now you have a business. So that's kind of my perspective on it.
Yeah, it's just nice to give back and to see another man succeed. I know Dean's the same way. Like, we just love seeing other men kind of dig themselves out of that hole they put themselves into, where they might not have that fire anymore that they used to have when they were 18 and kind of lost themselves with the marriage, the kids, the job. It can get busy at times. So just having that semblance again of who you used to be and getting that fire back, it's so much fun to watch. And both of us enjoy it thoroughly.
Yeah, I think really what it all comes down to is like, as you progress in life, I think we have a tendency to just become comfortable. Your standards, you start to concede. The things that you would have been okay with, you wouldn't have been okay with when you were 25. Now suddenly you don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
You don't want to have the argument with the wife. So you kind of just go along so you don't have to deal with the problem. You've given so much of yourself for so long without what you feel like is the appreciation you deserve. So you kind of just internalize and silently quit. And it becomes this monotonous life where you just do it because it's what you know. And it's no longer fulfilling. And you develop this depression where it's just kind of going day by day. And then all of a sudden you kind of get this wake up call where somebody comes in and grabs you by the collar and kind of picks you up and puts you back on your feet and says, hey, wake up. And at first, I think a lot of men, they kind of have this knee jerk reaction where they want to resist. They think you're attacking them. But then once they start to see the change and kind of reclaim themselves, you see that light turn back on. And I think that's probably the one thing that has driven me to continue to do the coaching side of things, even though it's not really something I do much of anymore, is because you see that for a guy. And now it's almost like he's on a war path.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really cool. So
it's the ultimate reward, right? When you see that light turn on and then you regain control, or you watch this guy regain control of his life. I mean, that to me is just such an ultimate win. Justin and I can both speak to this. We were comfortable. Everything was good. Bills are paid. Good job. It's not like I was failing in any different way, but I didn't have that fire. And there was nothing major that happened. There wasn't some, rock bottom or anything. But I could tell you this for sure, which is crazy. I'm 48 years old. I've never had more fire to build and grow and learn and teach and bring people with me ever in my entire life at 48 years old. And I can't really explain how it all evolved, but it's just such an incredible feeling to wake up and feel that every day.
Yeah, and also the other thing too is like pursuing challenge, right? Like I think instinctually we as men need a problem to solve. And that kind of is ultimately what leads to our downfall, and kind of what I talked about in terms of that complacency is like you kind of run out of what you feel like are meaningful problems to solve. So you just kind of it's almost like the movie The Avengers, where Thanos finally kind of snaps the finger and then he sits down at rest. He's like, "Ugh, I'm done." Right? Well, dude, you're fucking 35. You're not done. Get back up and go find more bigger problems to solve, you know? And then once they kind of realize that, it's like, oh, okay. And they lock in, and it's just like promotions, business is growing, you know, like relationship with the wife. It's all great. Like things just like kind of click. And it's all because that just small tweak and shift in their mindset. They get hungry again, I think is what it is.
Josh, why do you think so many men are craving accountability and community right now?
Because everybody lives on an island. I mean, I think it's also by design. If you go anywhere else, especially in the other side of the planet, people live in familial compounds. They're integrated, right? Like I don't just go buy a piece of property, which is me and my wife and my kids. It's this nuclear family that's separated from everything. A good example is I have these neighbors on either side of me, the neighborhood I'm in. One side, I don't even know the guy's name. And on this side of me, at most, it's a, hey, how are you? You know, and I think most people can agree, like you don't really have a community. You don't have mechanisms for accountability. You don't have mentorship built into the structure of your day-to-day life. You don't have a culture that is tied to a group. It's not tribal. And this actually wasn't the case in the United States until after World War II, right? It used to be this way where we had these familial compounds where like I would bring in my kids and they would marry and then they would have their kids and we all lived in this almost like a homestead.
Mm-hmm.
The nuclear family, I believe, you know, not to put the tinfoil hat on, is almost an invention that has ultimately led to the downfall of that communal state of mind that the foundation of the United States' entire DNA was built upon. You go back to like, you know, the founding fathers, like these dudes, they literally got on a boat and went somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Imagine like the perspective of how big the United States looked when they pulled up to this place and crash landed, right? The Mayflower or whatever. And it's like, there's no roads. It's just forests, trees, and they've made a entire country out of it together as a unit, as a team, as a community. And now it's like you have people who are just, like I said, I don't even know my neighbor. And I think we as humans have that innate desire to have a community, have a tribe, have a cause that we can all stand behind that's greater than ourselves. And when we don't have that, it creates this internal state of depression. And that's why so many people are kind of passively seeking it today and they don't even know they're looking for it.
Yeah, we used to be part of a tribe that would sit around the fire and plan the war coming up or how we were going to harvest or hunt. There were discussions every day, and now with the advent of technology, especially, it's just a quick little text message, "Hey, how you doing?" You don't really reveal how you're doing to somebody. You're missing that face-to-face aspect that we've had for the last millennia, like right back to the start of time.
I mean, you can go even further, man. Like if I want to be proud of my race, I can't be. If I want
Yeah.
to be proud of my
Yeah.
gender, I can't be. If I want to be proud of my preference, I can't be. If I have a different political point of view than the guy next door, I'm a bad person. If I have different like it's so like if you're not this, then it's almost like Talladega Nights. If you don't chew Big Red, then fuck you, right? Like everybody wants to be their own person and be an individual and the things that make us unique and special. But the second you're not like me, we're going to ostracize you. Right. And so it runs much deeper than that. And the reason I think comes down to the fact that none of us actually love ourselves. So instead of learning to love who I am and be okay with who I am and accept who I am and fall in love with me, and create a relationship with God internally and be a man of conviction of who I am, I have to count on the world to validate my worldview, my opinions, my beliefs. And if they don't validate it by agreeing with me, then it threatens my identity, which creates a cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
And now that's where you have these tantrums that are being thrown on the internet because people don't stand in conviction with themselves. They haven't accepted themselves and they haven't fallen in love with themselves. And that's really where it all comes down to, I think.
I think we should move on to health optimization here. We talk a little bit about some of your videos on
Nice.
Instagram that we've seen. And yeah, this section, Dean's just raring to go. I heard the hands rubbing there. That's a big
All
sign.
right. Cool.
So seen a few of your videos online anyway, across my feed from time to time, but what's the biggest misconception men have about testosterone replacement therapy?
A couple of years ago when I started, promoting TRT as a viable option for most men to kind of get their health in order and solve a lot of things related to their biology as well as their mental health, is that, there was concerns of, if I do TRT, am I going to be on it forever? There's a lot of stigma behind testosterone. Is it steroids? There's a lot of fear behind it. And back in the day, this is years ago, I would speak against those things, right? If you go on a testosterone replacement, yes, you will be on it forever. But like being on testosterone replacement assumes that you're not making it anyway. So like whether you're on it or not, you're still going to be low T or until you go onto it type thing. So that was my argument against that. And then the other piece is like, is it steroids? Yeah, it's steroids. But I think that there's a line between steroids and steroid abuse.
Yes.
What I do is steroid abuse. What you would do is testosterone replacement. These are two different things, right? And I've always been very transparent about what I do versus what I recommend men do. But the industry has kind of shifted. And the reason I say that is because now testosterone is becoming more of a mainstream.
Yeah.
Where it's generally accepted. I could basically throw a rock and hit a wellness clinic that's going to offer me a testosterone prescription. And what occurs is now this has become something that is for profit by many companies instead of for optimization and actually for the purpose of helping men get better. And so what's occurring is they're prescribing testosterone and pushing this stuff onto people, knowing that it's a lifetime commitment. It's an ongoing expense, knowing that there are ways that these men can optimize where they won't need the TRT.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the landscape that we're seeing now, is understand that if you have low testosterone, most of the time, especially if you're under 40, that can be solved without, we'll say, pharmaceutical intervention, and usually solved with just lifestyle. And if you choose to take a pharmaceutical approach, you can do it in a less invasive way that is going to hopefully optimize you without putting you onto a lifetime commitment of something for hundreds of dollars per month, where you're just basically forking money over to this company every month.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my realization, is these guys need to understand why their body is this way. What is it that they've been doing to prevent them from being optimized in the first place? Because if you look at the, 50, 60 years ago, there was no problems with low testosterone. In the 70s, the average testosterone level for a man was in the 1500 range. Now guys are lucky to be at 500. Why? And now when we start asking those questions, you realize that TRT is just a Band-Aid in most cases. So when I started my TRT clinic, the commitment that I made to myself was, I'm going to teach these guys how to fix it without the testosterone. Then if we're actually in a position where they need it, they can make an informed decision rather than just being pushed something that they can't go back from, right? And I think that's kind of a big misconception that a lot of people have, is just because you have low testosterone doesn't necessarily mean you need TRT. Most of the time it's because you're overweight, you're not sleeping, and you're not eating the foods that you should be eating. Your body's shutting down. So if you fix the foundations first, 9 times out of 10, your quality of life is going to improve, and those testosterone levels will normalize on their own over time.
I believe in that sentence 100%. I believe in it fully. Diet and exercise can take you a long way. I know personally I've had times where I've felt like I'm low T and I've thought about TRT therapy, but every time that I turn it around and take care of my health, all issues seem to go away.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, TRT is absolutely still an option for a guy who technically qualifies as far as his blood work is concerned. And he says, I understand, but I'd like this anyway. I mean, you do you, man. I'm just giving you the knowledge, right? I think that's the key distinction. Is giving people the information that they need to make informed decisions on their own instead of just pushing a drug onto them that they may not necessarily need.
Yeah, it's a tool in the program, not the entire program.
100%, right?
Yeah, I got 100 things. I love talking about this kind of stuff. Josh, let's hit on some of the things that a 40-year-old with low T, what levers can he pull without hormone replacement to start out with? I know you touched on sleep, nutrition, movement.
Biggest one for most guys, especially over 40, is consistency with their sleep. I've personally found former military, any blue collar shift type workers, they all typically struggle with low testosterone. There are studies out there that show that just one night of bad sleep will reduce your testosterone levels by 15%.
Wow.
Right. So imagine what doing that every day for years will do to your levels. Your body needs sleep. And most of us are overworked, overstressed, and underrested. And for most guys, what it comes down to is creating boundaries. I have to sleep, which means you need to let your boss know, no, I can't work an extra overtime. I can't work the double. I can't come in on my day off. Letting your wife or your kids know, hey, I love you, but I need to go to sleep. Because most guys, they give so much of themselves to the world around them, the ones that they love, their job, and their commitments that they fulfill to the world, that they forget about themselves. So the only time that they can do for them is time that they would be sleeping,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
And so they create this situation where it's like this revolving door of creating bigger problems, and it's a cycle. You have to sleep. And most of the time, just solving a sleep problem will fix most of the problems as far as hormones are concerned. Once you get that in order, I think the next big thing for most men is protein intake. I don't remember her name off the top of my head. She's a doctor on Instagram, very prominent. Her first name is Gabrielle, I believe. She talks about this idea that the United States, we're not obese, we're under muscled, meaning we're not too
Yep.
fat, we don't have enough muscle. Muscle is the, I would say, biggest ROI thing that you can do to improve your overall health, building muscle. And in
agree.
order to have muscle on your frame, you need to eat protein. Most guys, they're not eating nearly as much protein as they should be eating in order to just maintain the muscle on their frame. And so what happens over time, especially as guys move into their 30s, 40s, and 50s, is they're eating less and less and less protein. Their muscle is basically catabolizing over those years. They're getting less and less muscle, maintaining their ongoing diet, eating like shit, putting on more and more and more body fat, making it harder and harder and harder for them to lose that weight because they're becoming more insulin resistant. Their metabolic health is reducing over time. And this is a problem that compounds onto itself. And so now you basically have this guy who's not sleeping, plus he's not getting enough protein. And it actually works against itself because he's not able to produce the hormones. He's super high cortisol. He's stressed. He's overweight. He's under muscled. He's not burning any fat at rest. And it's just this compounding problem that feeds into itself. So the next piece is getting your protein. And then, of course, the third piece is always you need to be doing some sort of resistance training at least 3 times per week. If anything, just to signal your body to keep the muscle that you have.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to go into the gym and be a bodybuilder. Go challenge yourself 3 days a week to tell your body that you're not getting old and giving up. Right.
Yeah.
The joke that we always use is if you don't use it, you lose it. What's the difference between a 50-year-old man who spent his whole life active, strength training, taking care of his body versus a 50-year-old man who sat on the couch every day after work and did nothing? These are two completely different bodies. This guy blames it on getting old when he knows that the only difference is this guy just made sure to just stay consistent with how active he was. If you continue to ask from your body, it will deliver. If you stop using it and you stop demanding that physicality, then it will concede it.
Right.
To answer your question, Dean, those in my mind are by far the biggest ROI things that you can be doing in your life to ensure that your hormones are optimized and your performance is optimized.
Yeah, listening to the Ben Pekulski Muscle Intelligence podcast, he had a podcast about 12 different reasons why your testosterone is low. And his number one thing was doing hard shit, like if you don't do hard shit consistently, what are you telling your body? You're just telling your body that it doesn't need testosterone, right? And obviously physical hard challenges are the primary objective there, but I think you could even go a little bit further, emotionally hard things to do or mentally hard things to do, and challenging yourself to get out of your comfort zone in multiple different ways.
I've never met somebody who's mentally strong but physically weak.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I think being physically strong and developing physical strength and self-control and resilience is the gateway to becoming mentally resilient. You can't have one without the other. And so that kind of feeds into what you were saying as far as like testosterone. When I look at a fat, pudgy dude who looks like a pear, I know that he can't do a fucking pull-up. And I also know that his testosterone is probably 352. Like, there's always a correlation.
Right down to the ones column too. 352, not 356. I know it's 352.
So yeah, man, you're on track with that, Dean. The physicality is absolutely a must. And I think the other thing that we kind of discount is the United States especially strips out a lot of the nutrients from our food. And they're stripping out a lot of the minerals that you would get from your water. Magnesium, zinc, selenium, boron, like all of these minerals that your body counts on in order to function and actually serve as the raw materials for the hormones in your thyroid, your growth hormone axis, as well as your testosterone axis. And you could be doing your best to eat a healthy, quote unquote, healthy, nutritious, well balanced diet and still be malnourished from a lot of these micronutrients that your body relies on because of the way that our food is processed in this country. And so the other piece that I always recommend for every guy, and this is kind of what we decided, why we decided to go the route of starting a supplement brand, is because we need a multivitamin to make sure that we're serving that insurance policy to cover down on all the nutrients that we could potentially need, right? At a minimum, you should always add omega-3s, some sort of fish oil to help you with that piece. That's going to have a significant improvement on your hormone balance and the quality of your sleep and everything in between. And then there are some other raw materials that you can also add, like zinc and magnesium, to help with performance as well as production of testosterone. And interestingly enough, there's never been a guy that I've met who I've looked at his labs and had low testosterone, but had normal vitamin D levels. There's a direct correlation. So I always have my guys supplement with vitamin D3 as well, but you can't do D3 without K2. So you add those together. So if I was going to suggest like a baseline of supplements, it would be that list. It would be a multivitamin, magnesium, zinc, fish oil, D3, K2. And every man should have that on his counter that he takes every day.
Hey guys, quick pause to talk about a brand I actually use and trust. Prestige Labs. When it comes to supplements, I don't mess around with hype or garbage ingredients. Prestige Labs focuses on clean, third-party tested products that actually support performance and recovery. I personally use their creatine for strength and output, protein powder to hit my daily intake, and their cravings crusher at night to stay disciplined and avoid late-night snacking. If you're training hard and want supplements that support your work instead of working against you, check them out. You can find the link in the show notes and on our Instagram page under the Linktree link. And as always, this isn't medical advice, just real tools for men putting in real work. Yeah, I think I've got 3 of the 5, I would say, from that list. But I've got 3 things to add there. I think the doctor you're referring to is Dr. Gabrielle Leone. She's an excellent podcast, too. I can't remember the name of her podcast, but it's really good. The second thing, when you're talking about building blocks, I think, like in our community, large oil field community in northern Alberta, lots of guys getting up at 4 a.m, going to 7-Eleven, and breakfast is an egg taquito of some kind, and then lunch is a taquito, and then
Outroller.
yeah, exactly. We're not taking care of ourselves in that aspect. I think that's a huge driver in hormones and hormone production. Like nutrition is a huge aspect, and it goes hand in hand with the weight training that we should all be doing. But I wish I could help change some of their lives somehow. And that's what I'm working towards, is how do we set ourselves up for success, knowing we have a 12-hour to 14-hour day ahead of us, and it puts us in a better position for tomorrow. How do we get a plan in place for that. That's something I really want to tackle in the years going forward.
Well, and I think it comes down to kind of two or three things, right? This is common across the board for blue collar types. The real reason why they're making these decisions as far as their nutrition is concerned isn't because it's like this active, we'll say, they're not doing it intentionally, for lack of a better term. It's not like it's like, I love roller hot dogs. It's
Yeah.
most of the time they don't know better. Meaning, if I go into the gas station, they don't know what their healthy option is. So they just grab whatever's quick and easy and convenient. And the other piece is the fact that they're usually not prepared. So he doesn't have his lunch packed. He doesn't have his food packed. He's not bringing his food with him. And so most of the time, it's like part of the routine is stop at the gas station, grab an energy drink or a coffee, and then whatever I can grab to get into my stomach to get me going for the day.
Yep.
What I've found is that helps the most is stay away from this aisle in the grocery store or in the gas station. Instead, go look over here. Right. If you go into every gas station nowadays, they have like one of those circular shaped open refrigerators that has like all the health foods in it.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time you can get yogurts. You can get some type of like what I call them as daddy lunchables, where it has the ham and the cheese and the crackers in it. Right. You can get beef jerky, pistachios, some type of nuts. Like it's absolutely possible to make healthy choices inside of a gas station. You just have to consciously do it instead of just kind of go through the motions of what's routine for you. You know what I mean?
Oh, exactly. It's a huge thing. I realized a few years ago, like there's usually hard boiled eggs that are even
Yeah.
shelled and ready to go. Like you just have to know what you're looking for. It's that direction and guidance. I don't think those guys are acting out of maliciousness. It's just the lifestyle that we have. And after 2 or 3 years, it's a habit. It's got to be a system implementation on top of it to beat the habit. You got to beat it with something else.
Well, not just that, but like when you're a young man, like you're resilient. You don't care as much about that shit.
No.
Right. Last thing I'm worried about is like, can I get enough protein when I'm 26? Give me another pack of Marlboro Reds. We're going to send this day with 3 monsters.
Yeah.
Send it. Right. Like, and then you turn around to 8 and you're like, holy crap, where'd my dick go? Like, what happened?
Yeah.
And then you have a wake up call, you know? So life happens so fast for some of us that we don't realize that sometimes things just get away from us. I don't think it's ever an intentional disregard. It's more so just kind of living life and then waking up one day and realizing like, oh crap, I let this go a little bit too far, you know?
Yeah. We're in the rhubarb. I don't know if I can recover the vehicle now. It's too late.
Right. Yeah.
And not to mention the 48 beer the night before at 26 too. And then go to work.
Sure, yeah.
So, Josh, what role should peptides play in a man's health journey? Do you think it should be more of a tool?
It's a tool. You know, going back to the conversation about foundations, a lot of guys, they'll come to me and they'll ask me, Josh, you know, where does creatine fit? Where does this supplement fit? Do I need this EAA or BCAA or fat burner? I look at peptides as kind of the same category as I would supplements or PEDs for that matter, right? These aren't going to be a foundation that you build your health upon. And the core message of my business is very straightforward when it comes to peptide education. Like, number one, I'm giving you information so you can make the best decision for yourself. How you choose to use that information is your prerogative. When it comes to peptide education, this is like a huge demand for knowledge and information. People are asking for it. It's new. So, of course, a lot of my content is revolving around peptides. That doesn't necessarily mean that I'm like the guy who's waking up every day and injecting myself with 9 different peptides.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that this is just another thing that people are going to try to use as a shortcut to do the work for them that they're not willing to do. It's really what it comes down to. Are peptides that optimize your mitochondria like SS31 and MOTC and ADD plus going to help with your performance? Certainly. Are they going to move the needle in terms of your longevity? Not if you're not doing these things.
Exactly.
And if you were doing these things, you wouldn't need these things anyway. I wouldn't need mitochondrial optimization and healing from a peptide like SS31 if I was taking care of myself. So we kind of can put it in the same category that I kind of talked about with TRT. If we did the foundations, we wouldn't need the TRT. So the only way to get your body to a place where your testosterone levels are normal is to focus on the foundations.
Mm-hmm.
I think the same thing kind of also applies to the peptide stuff. Do they have a place? Certainly, but it definitely should not be the first thing that you implement into your regimen if you're looking to make a change.
I couldn't agree more there. Dean and I were actually talking to that this morning. I think I would much rather see a guy spend a year lifting weights, changing nutrition, being better with his wife, the brotherhood, the accountability, finding people that share the same vision, and enjoying the process and the grind of it, so that at the end of it, you're a different man. And if you still have 10 pounds to lose, that's where I think retatrutide or GLP-1 could come in. If we think that it could be the last tool, the last thing to get you there, knowing full well that when you're done and you do that little stretch, that now you're not pharmacology dependent like most drug pushing doctors are in America and Canada today. Like, I want to see you use it as a tool at the end, but I want you to be successful first. I want you to enjoy the process in shaping who you're going to be.
I agree with that 1,000%, but I would add one caveat. In a perfect world, what we just described, absolutely. But the fact is this, if we were to look at human psychology, the thing that drives whether or not we do anything is if we're going to get some sort of return from it, right?
Right.
The definition of motivation is just the reason you do or don't do something. And so at the end of the day, what it comes down to is either you're pursuing an outcome or you're escaping something that you don't want. That's what drives human action at the core level from, a primal instinct perspective. So when we look at people who are overweight and struggle with their habits or making a change, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is a lot of people will get started with something and do it for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they struggle because they run out of motivation. What that comes down to is the fact that the effort isn't rendering the result that they were hoping they would get from it. If you woke up and went to the gym tomorrow and you walked out of the gym and you look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you'd be much more motivated to go back the next day.
Yes.
Agreed? But part of the reason why it's so hard to stay consistent with these things is because you're not getting the result for a very long time. And most of the time, these guys, they get frustrated because they're not seeing the outcome for the effort that they feel they're putting toward the thing. And
Very true.
ultimately, that's what it comes down to. And if we were to talk about discipline, that would be the definition of discipline: is how long are you willing to do the thing without getting the benefit of the result? So when we talk about peptides, especially weight loss medications, what this is effectively doing is it's shortening the window of how long the person has to wait before they can experience the result from the effort they're putting forth. And in my
Very true.
opinion, in very specific cases, and I've seen this can actually serve as the catalyst that someone needs to put them
Yeah.
on the trajectory towards being disciplined, right? Because
Very
when
true.
you're 350 pounds and it hurts to get out of bed and you're so far gone, that mentally for a man, not only is he ashamed of himself, but he's asking himself if it's even worth it.
Yeah.
So, hey, let's give you this GLP. As long as you commit to showing up for yourself every day and at least putting some effort forth in addition to it, this guy loses 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds in 6 months. Now it's going to be much easier for him to stay on track to lose the next 100 pounds that he needs to lose to get healthy.
Very true.
And so I think, one of the lessons that I've had to learn as a coach when it comes into stepping into the arena of helping these men is we have to give people grace. In a perfect world, yes, peptides are a tool. You should be able to stay consistent on your own and use it that way. Sure. Walk a mile in that guy's shoes before
Yeah.
you judge him for doing the thing that he felt like he needed to do to make the change. Because the fact of the matter is, if he doesn't stand in integrity with that commitment, he comes off of the drug, guess what? He's going to be fat a year later anyway. And he's going to have to pay the price for being lazy. There's no free lunch. We don't have any right to judge him for how he got there.
True enough.
Right. So that's kind of my both sides of the coin in terms of the argument with the peptide thing.
Yeah, very true. I think I'm able to change my opinion on that after listening to that story, because I can think back to multiple times in my life where maybe that little peptide kick in the ass might have been what I needed. It would have pushed me
Sure.
to where I needed to get to. But I'm not sure I would have had the systems and discipline in place to follow it, but it would have been it. It would have been super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier that in the past, alcohol has been something that you needed or that you struggled with. I would make the argument that you didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to stop drinking. There was something that kind of pushed you to do that, make that decision. And hopefully it wasn't loss of life or love or, you know, a relationship, right? Like hopefully it was somebody like Dean who came in and said, "Hey, Justin, put the drink down and lock in. Come on, let's do this together."
Yep.
Well, not everybody has that guy. And for some people, the GLP-1 is their last ditch effort to try to make some type of change so they can take control of their life. I tell you what, man, I'm a black and white type of dude, but it, it's really eye opening to kind of step into that perspective and offer a little bit more grace to the people who need it. Because I know at one point in my life, I needed that. Right.
Yeah. So well said.
Absolutely, Josh. Thanks so much for that. The two sides of that coin, the perception on that is so important to expand on. Like, you take a guy who's been 350 pounds for the better part of his adult life, and he's tried a couple diets here and there, and it's just not working, and his discipline sucks with food. Okay, you give him a GLP-1, and over the course of a couple months, he's able to drop 30 pounds. Well, that guy now has momentum, right? Momentum and traction. He's not going to quit. He's just going to keep on rolling, keep on rolling. And like that shift, that head start is all he really needed to become that next version of himself. And then can expand into all different kinds of other peptides, mitochondria peptides or the BPCs and the KPV or whatever. Someone who's been chronic knee issues or shoulder issues, and then they start taking BPC 157, TB 500. All of a sudden, their knees aren't as sore, so they're able to do some rehab work. That gets them over the hump and then gets them into a whole new place in life, right? Where they could start really grabbing gears and making movements.
I'll tell you what, man, confidence for a man is game changing. And, you know, people always ask, well, where do you get confidence from? Like, it comes from competence, doing shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, most of the time, the reason why these guys, especially if you're that obese, struggle with confidence is because they've been spending their whole life quitting on themselves before they saw the result.
Yep. That was me.
And trust me, they know, right? You don't have to tell them. They know that they've been quitting on themselves. They have to wake up every day and see it in the mirror. And like me, as a dude who's 230 pounds, jacked, going to the gym every day, it's easy for me to talk down to those dudes. But I have no idea what it's like to wake up every day for my whole life and hate what I see looking back at me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that 30 pounds just might give him enough confidence to feel like maybe this time could be the time that he actually does it, where he actually commits
Right.
to himself, where he can feel what it feels like to be proud of himself. So,
For someone like you who's in this space, Josh, like how many times have you seen it now with the GLP-1s? Like, I mean, I've been researching this and digging in and for a couple years now, but I've seen it with, I think, 25, 30 different men and even women so far. And it's a great change. It's a great thing. And you talk to them and they're like, "Hey, you know what? It took me 6 months and I'm down 80 pounds or whatever." You just see this spark in them that they've never had, right? And they're just so excited and vibrant about life. It's pretty cool to see.
well, I mean, for context, we probably sell about 3,000 vials of Red True Type per month. There you go.
Jeez. That's a
You know?
Costco pallet right there.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of been a lot of the, I would say, the rapid growth that we've seen from the community is like all of these guys that have been spending years mentally masturbating around the whole idea of motivation are now actually able to implement a tool that allows them to get off of the wall, get off of the freaking sideline and step in and start taking action. That's what I get to observe every day inside of our community is these guys are finally like proud of themselves.
Yeah.
And so it's actually taught me a lesson in the way that I parent my children, in fact. So, you know, whenever my son does something and he's happy about it and he's proud, I ask him. I never tell my sons that I'm proud of them. I ask them if they're proud of themselves. And it's exactly for that reason, because I see the power and importance of the difference between when you change a guy's perspective of seeking approval rather than approving of himself. And the peptides for a lot of guys have been that stepping stone that they needed to finally get there. So I think it's powerful.
Sorry to go back. This is my ADD brain kicking in. I wanted to hit the hemoglobin thing with testosterone. I know you made a post on that once, and I struggle with high red blood count cells. So I have bloodlet in the past, but I just wanted to see what your advice would be on that. And I think the video that I watched the other day was just slowly drop your dose, which I have been doing, and then I've been taking more frequently, so I take it twice a week. Was that the best fix, or did you have any other levers you could pull on that?
When you run labs to prescribe someone testosterone, there's a few things that you're going to look at. Okay. The first is always going to be, of course, the testosterone level. Duh, right? But the other biomarkers, especially in the United States, the minimum that you have to check is PSA, which is prostate health. And then the other two are your hematocrit and your hemoglobin. Okay. Hemoglobin is basically a protein that exists inside of your red blood cells that carries oxygen from your lungs to the rest of the body and then returns carbon dioxide back to your lungs. It contains iron. So when you're anemic, typically that's going to be reflected through your hemoglobin, your body's inability to remove carbon dioxide from your body. Okay. That's why when you go to give blood, they check your hemoglobin, because if it's too low, then they're not going to take blood from you, because then you're going to become more anemic, and it's going to prevent your body from being able to basically export the waste from your body. Okay. So that's where that comes into play. Now, a lot of people talk about when your hematocrit is too high, you need to give blood. Well, there's a reason why you don't necessarily want to do that. Okay. All hematocrit is, it's a measure of the percentage of your total blood volume that's made up of red blood cells. Really, what your hematocrit is measuring is how much red blood cell activity you have. Now, most of the time for guys, what I've found is that the reason why their hematocrit is high, the reason why they have a high density of red blood cells, is simply because they're dehydrated. They're not drinking enough water. Okay. So that means for somebody on testosterone replacement, somebody who's active in the gym, at a minimum, you should be drinking a half an ounce per pound of your body weight. Okay. So per day. So if you're a 200-pound man, you should at a minimum be drinking 100 ounces of water, and always make sure that you're putting electrolytes in. But when you go to give blood, now what you're doing is you're extracting red blood cells from your blood. This alters that balance. So it's basically creating this false view of what that ratio is, which is why your hematocrit lowers, right? Well, what happens when you give away a pint of blood? Your body is going to go into overdrive, produce even more. So the bounce back occurs. So basically what happens is you're just kind of kicking the can down the road when it comes to giving blood. You kind of understand where this is going.
Yeah.
And the worst part about that is you have this measurement that we track to look at your iron, which is called ferritin. And ferritin is like your body's iron store. Well, when I give blood, in order to make sure that I have sufficient iron to be able to do the things that I need to do, like export the carbon dioxide, your body pulls from that ferritin. And over time, this creates a deficiency. Well, the interesting part about that is the fact that when your iron and your ferritin are low, you're experiencing almost all of the same side effects that you would experience if you had low testosterone. So there's irony in that, right? Where like you actually are taking this testosterone to solve this problem about how you're feeling and performing, and then you're giving blood because you're on testosterone, only to create the problem by making yourself anemic. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your question, Dean, 9 times out of 10, a slightly elevated hematocrit over 51 isn't going to put you at a risk of stroke. Okay. If you do have an elevated hematocrit, all that really means most of the time is you need to be drinking more water. Okay.
Okay.
What you really need to be paying attention to is your hemoglobin. If it's elevated there, that's where we would probably want to look at having some type of intervention to look at your risk of stroke and solving that problem. Blood thinners, things of that nature. Does that answer your question?
That's a great answer. You understand this very well.
I do a lot of research.
It shows. That was an extremely intense answer. Like it had every detail. Do this for a living for sure.
Okay, let's go back to peptides. Josh, what are your top 5 favorites?
Okay. I actually just did this video yesterday for my guys. They asked what my number one peptide was. Growth hormone, without a doubt, especially if you're on testosterone replacement, right? So it doesn't make sense to optimize your testosterone if you're not also optimizing your growth hormone. These two work together. They're on, we'll say, parallel axes in your body and the way that things function, right? Uh, and on the other side of the coin, if you're taking a growth hormone related peptide like CJC, testosterone, ipamorelin, I'm sure you've heard those on the list on the internet. It doesn't make sense to be taking those peptides to increase your growth hormone and your IGF-1 levels if your testosterone axis is not optimized. These work together, right? So the reason why I like growth hormone is because it's very low in terms of the side effect profile and the way that it's going to negatively affect my body in terms of like risk, but the benefit is very high, right? My body's not going to desensitize to growth hormone. I can pretty much use as much as I want. And as long as I'm eating enough calories and my hormones are optimized on the testosterone side, I'm always going to get the benefit from the growth hormone. This is going to move the needle most for guys who are looking for recovery, health, sleep quality, longevity, muscle building, fat loss. The list goes on and on and on. Growth hormone is responsible for tissue reconstruction, collagen production. It does a lot, and it's a little bit more expensive compared to other peptides. But if I was to pick one, growth hormone would be on the top of the list 10 times out of 10. I guess second on the list, if I was to pick, I think retatrutide is a very, very, very powerful tool that can be used. I've taken it. I love the way it works. I would say that this is like the equivalent of a metabolic reset. So if somebody was going to take a peptide to help them kind of get a kickstart and move in the right direction for solving their metabolic health and getting healthy, retatrutide would be a spectacular tool to help them do that. The side effect profile is kind of my concern. Not because like most people experience bad side effects, but more so because these GLP type drugs haven't been around long enough for us to really understand what the long-term side effects could be. And every time we do a study on these things, we find out something new about them, right? So if you heard, last year they talked about a big lawsuit that was happening where people on Ozempic were going blind, right? And then there was another study that came out earlier this year that talked about how people who are on GLP-1 type drugs have like an overall reduction in desire of anything that produces dopamine, including sexual desire as well as other things. Now, this could potentially be a good or a bad thing, but you can kind of see that like as more comes out on these drugs, there's definitely going to be a situation where, again, we realize that there's no free lunch. But in terms of all of the peptides that I've seen out there, I think retatrutide has had probably the biggest return for most guys in terms of the results that they were seeking. So that's why I would put it as number 2. Let's see. Growth hormone, Reta. I'm a huge fan of, actually, a lot of my guys are huge fans of PT-141. PT-141 is more of a bedroom peptide. But if you're looking for something that's going to enhance that side of things, I've never had a dude come into my forum after trying PT-141 and say bad things. We'll say that. Okay. And so the way PT-141 works is it acts specifically on your melanocortin receptors inside of your brain, and it increases, we'll say, sexual desire and the pleasure that you gain from that experience. Better sex, more endurance, higher performance, just overall a better experience in the bedroom. They love it. They say it's better than any Viagra or Cialis or anything in between that they've ever tried. So if you're a guy and you're looking for that side of the house, I would say PT-141 is definitely a must try. In terms of like the peptides like SS31, MOTS-C, NAD+, epitalin, like all the mitochondrial optimization peptides, I think that those are great options if I was to kind of put those on the tail end of this list. But specifically for people who are over 40 who haven't lived active lifestyles, those could be a phenomenal addition to their health protocol to kind of give them a bump in the right direction. For a person who's been relatively active and taking care of themselves they're probably not going to experience as much benefit, or if any benefit, from those peptides. So it's kind of a coin flip depending on who you are. If you were to ask me to put them in order, I would say that SS31 is probably the best. MOTS-C is a very close second, if not equal to SS31. And NAD plus is kind of one of those peptides where you're going to take it and you're going to be like, whoa, this is awesome. I love this stuff. So you could take those three together for mitochondrial health, especially if you're over 40, 45, you're going to feel like a completely different person. So I know you asked for 5. I gave you 6. Hopefully that's all right.
Yeah, I can see him smiling over there like a little schoolgirl. He's loving this.
Yeah.
And I'm literally taking all of those right now. Every single one you mentioned. So
There you go. So you agree?
yeah, 100%.
I'm taking Retatrutide for the first time here at the moment. So
Okay.
it's been an interesting experience. Never felt anything like this anyway. It's crazy just to be able to eat a bit of protein during the day and weight lift and still have the energy and just steady energy. It's been phenomenal.
Just make sure that you get that protein in, man. And I would say if you're on the Reta, you're not going to want to eat. What you're going to have to do if you want to hit that protein target is break your meals up into smaller, more frequent meals. And it's almost going to feel like you're grazing, right? Maybe grab a couple bites here, grab a couple bites there. You're not going to be able to sit down for a meal the way that you used to, right?
Yep.
So just kind of come to terms with that and make getting your protein in a priority, and you'll get a much better result from it for sure.
Absolutely. Thanks for the advice. It's definitely felt like that the last couple of weeks. The plates are a lot smaller.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks, Josh. That was awesome.
All right, let's wrap this up then. One last question for Josh. Are you ready for this one? This is the big heavy hitter here.
All right.
Imagine you're at the end of your life, Josh. Your children and the next generation of men are standing in front of you. You have 1 minute left to live. What wisdom are you leaving behind?
You're not going to know what to do. None of us know what we're doing. You know, I remember looking back as a young man, I was growing up, I looked at my parents and other adults and men that I looked up to and role models, and I thought they had it all figured out. And now, you know, I'm a father and, you know, business owner, employees. Even today, I look like I'm this big, successful, awesome, you know, guy, I would say, for lack of a better term. Most of the time, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm honest. But what I can guarantee you is that if you just focus on doing the next right thing,
Yeah.
Love it.
standing in integrity with yourself and conviction, you'll be all right. And you'll know what to do, right? I think there was a little bit of I'm not going to say confusion, but miscommunication when Jesus Christ said, bear your cross to his disciples. There's a lesson in the Bible where he has his disciples. This is before he goes to get crucified. He says, you have to bear your cross. Now, if we were to place this into, you know, historical context, crucifixion was a common way of, we'll say, executing people. It was a humiliation ritual. They used crucifixion to make an example out of people. Jesus Christ, the reason why he was murdered was because he stood on business. He was willing to stand before the governments and the religious institutions of his time fearlessly and speak his truth. He stood in an ultimate degree of integrity and was willing to bear the cross for it. That was the lesson that he was trying to pass his disciples and pass to you, was that being a man of God, being a man of Christ, means being able to look inward and know that you did the right thing universally. Now, does that mean that you have to stand on a hill and die on it? No. You can change your opinions and your viewpoints and who you are and your values as you grow and learn and become a better person. That's what life is about. But at a minimum, you should know that 100% of the time, you made the best decision you possibly could with the information you had, and you did it with the right intention from a place of integrity. And as long as you do that, you will be successful.
That's a phenomenal message and probably the best 1 minute left to live response that we've received yet. I don't know what Dean thinks about that.
By far. You knocked that out of the park, brother. That was unreal.
Yeah. That was a 500-foot home run when Barry Bonds was on the juice. That went far.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
You're making me blush.
Yeah, just want to say thanks for coming on the show. It was awesome. This was by far my favorite so far. And I think I've said that about every podcast, but holy crow, this one was like, we could have spent another 4 hours, I think.
Yeah, so good. Thanks again, Josh, for coming on.
I truly appreciate the opportunity, guys. I'm very thankful for the invite. I hope this can serve some value for your audience and help them in any way they need. And if there's anything you guys need, just send me a message, man. I'm here for you.
Josh, thank you for coming on today. Your story is a reminder that strength isn't built through motivation. It's built through standards, discipline, accountability, and a willingness to do hard things even when no one is watching. To everyone listening today, your health is your responsibility. Your family is your responsibility. Your future is your responsibility. Take ownership. Raise your standards. Keep your word to yourself. Do the hard thing. And as you all probably already know, the grind is the gold. We'll see you next time. Titans out. Well, that's it for this episode of Titans for Life. If you got value today, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share this with another Titan who needs to hear it. You can follow us on Facebook at Titans for Life. That's Titans, the number 4, Life, or on Instagram at Titans_4_life_online, all lowercase. And if you want to rep the movement, support the show, or grab some Titan gear or supplements, check out our links in the show notes. Our Shopify store is now up. Until next time, always remember, the grind is the gold.